Gloom is but the shade of Divine Mother's hand outstretched caressingly. Sometimes, when the Mother is going to caress you, a shadow is caused by her hand before it touches you. So when trouble comes, don't think that she is punishing you. Her hand overshadowing you holds some blessing as it reaches out to bring you nearer to her. Paramahansa Yogananda. But in the end, who is she? In Sumeria, she was Namu, from whom all things came. In Mesopotamia, Inanna, the Queen of Heaven. In Egypt, she was Isis, bringing healing, protection, and magic, and was worshipped in the ancient world from England to Afghanistan. Whereas in India, her names are too many to count. Lakshmi, goddess of love and abundance. Kali, destroyer of evil. Durga, the protectress. Saraswati, of music and wisdom. And in China, the sublime Kuan Yin, both feminine and masculine, the incarnation of compassion. Perhaps she is all this and more. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A great saint of India said of her, Maha Prakriti is the creative power of God, the aspect of spirit as Mother Nature. She is imbued with the seed of 24 attributes, the workings of which give birth to all manifestation. The Holy Ghost vibration Om is analogous to the cosmic Virgin Mary, because she is thus the mother of the immanent universal Christ intelligence, the Son of God, and all created objects. Jesus, incarnate Christ consciousness, came immaculately through the Virgin Mary. Likewise, the universal Christ intelligence was born or reflected in the cosmic body of pure vibration, the cosmic Virgin Mary, through the instrumentality of God the Father. And yet Mary herself was a woman, a mother. Born, so Catholics believe, uniquely pure from sin. The Immaculate Conception. To become the Mother of God. Is Mary, like her Son, both human and divine? The Mother of the Christ, and the Mother of us all. What is the truth of the apparitions? The miracles at Lourdes, where Bernadette saw the Lady and amidst ridicule found a miraculous spring, and whose body remains undecayed to this day. miracles will it take until we believe? In 1917, amidst war and revolution, she came to Fatima with a warning and a miracle none could ignore. Egypt in 1968, Muslims and Christians alike saw her in Zaytun. 1975, Akita, Japan, her statue wept tears, verified as human. Perhaps the greatest of her miracles is the least known, appearing thousands of times to 4 young girls in northern Spain. Astonishing miracles, healings, levitation, and inexplicable phenomena. Captured on film, verified by physicians, and suppressed by the Church. Garabandal, Spain. First they saw an angel. Their parish priest believed them. Then came the lady. Like a long-lost mother you didn't know you had. Like your sweetest friend, the children called her. She spoke of prayer, repentance, and the importance of communion. So why did the Church suppress the apparition? Because she warned of a grave scandal to befall the Church, that many cardinals, bishops, and priests were on the road to hell, and that a terrible chastisement would come, but a grace also, a warning to be seen and felt by all the world, a warning, a miracle, and a chastisement. The children are grown now. The warning will come as a crisis of conscience to every soul. The signs are now being seen and are being echoed by seers the world over. An epical transformation for humanity and our Mother Earth. The ascension of the human spirit and a divine intervention and a separation of worlds. Possibly the greatest story in human history. Hello everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising. This is Michael Henry Dunn, and this is a very special program today, and I am so very glad to welcome my good friend Kalyani Sundari to join us on this exploration of Ascension, Mother Mary, and the prophecies. So Kalyani, so good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. So, the framework for what we are exploring and sharing today, a lot of it will be familiar to many of you, who have tuned into Blue Star Rising over the last 2 years. We have explored with Reverend Maya the ascension dynamics, the downloads she has received from the Thoth Extreme about what ascension means, how it is tied into the awakening hearts of us all on the planet, such that there is this incoming energy which is facilitating a rapid evolution of the human spirit to such an extent that it is almost as if there's a separation of worlds for those who are tuning into this frequency and for those whose sole choice is not to tune into this frequency. And we have often focused on the reality of the divine feminine, God in the aspect of the Divine Mother. And specifically, we have had Kalyani join us previously on our program about the return of the priestess oracle. And so this special exploration that we're doing today is focusing on the apparitions of the Virgin Mary and the prophecies that have come to be associated with those apparitions, specifically focusing on the amazing events at Garabandal in Spain. And so, as you will have just seen in the brief introduction of Kalyani, she is a spiritual visionary, also a spiritual psychologist with a master's in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. She is an ordained priestess in the 13 Moons priestess lineage, and is also a quite amazing devotional vocalist, cosmic vocalist, you might say, whose music videos, Tears for Inanna and Namu's Invocation, have been seen by millions. And so Kalyani's background is especially well suited to explore with us these amazing events that are now unfolding, particularly because of a pilgrimage that you made, Kalyani, recently to some of the sites of the apparitions of Mary. So I'd like to just ask you if you just share with us briefly some of your life journey, particularly as it relates to the divine feminine and how you came to your work as a spiritual visionary and psychologist and singer, and as a sisterhood leader and ordained facilitator of the beautiful ceremonies that you and your sisters have in your beautiful temple there. So with that, if you'd just like to share what comes up in regard to your journey.
Well, thank you for such a beautiful introduction, Michael.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really important since this is such an interestingly touchy topic and sensitive, that I wanted to start by setting an intention, that it is my intention that everyone that may come to watch this effort here, that they may feel the love of service from where it's coming from, and that they may feel inspired, more connected to the divine, and hopeful. And it is also very important that we keep in mind that whatever is going to be shared here in terms of supposed facts about the Marian apparitions were collected from a bunch of filters, a lot of different filters, not just from the visionaries, but also from many others who, before we could ever access the contents, even right after they happened, had to go through many hands and then come into the media in books and etc. So I ask that the viewer listens with their heart and also listen to their hearts for that resonant feeling, that ring of truth to guide them. And I hope that this conversation leaves us also in some way transformed, all of those by grace, right?
Amen to that.
You wanted to go over a little bit of my background, right? And how I got involved with all of what I do. Well, I like to say, my first memory that I have as a human being incarnated in this body was my mother teaching me to do the sign of the cross, and I even wrote an article about it a couple of years ago. And I found that mystifying, and it was like the beginning of my journey. But I'm I'm pretty sure I came, and my astro chart can show that too, with this kind of blueprint to just a very intense interest on what is behind the veil, not so much in the material universe, but more on where the parts we can't see, right? So as a child, and I grew up in a country, I was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it's a country that has a lot of mysticism and a lot of spirituality. And it's a Catholic country as well. So I grew up praying a lot. This was my first connection to spirit. And from there, I was able to experience through Cardicism and mediums in my family, channelings and things that you can't explain, you know, from an early age. My awareness of our existence not being material, but essentially uh, energetic, spiritual, was unquestionable. I never questioned that. It wasn't something I was trying to understand. It just was, because it was so apparent all around me. And my quest continued. I was, you know, I was an avid reader. I was not exactly the most average child, you know. As a child, yes, I was super active. But as I became a teenager, my interests were more and continue to dive deep, you know. So I went into continuing to do my prayers. I could not fall asleep if I didn't pray. And those at that time were Catholic prayers, you know. And my mother, she taught me a handful of them. and I started studying other modalities of healing. And I was interested in visiting, and I started visiting Cardicis centers, and even Rosicrucian centers. There's 2 different lineages in Rosicrucian. I started taking yoga. I was about 15, and my yoga teacher was an advanced, let's say, priest inside the Rosicrucian Amorc, and he had a library. And I was always, you know, sneaking in and wanting to pull the books from the 3rd shelf. There were 3 shelves that he would let the students of yoga take, you know, and I remember wanting to take the ones that he said, no, Anjinho, he called me Anjinho, like a little angel, you cannot read those yet. First, you have to read the ones on the 1st shelf, you know. But, you know, and I went on this journey. I read Barbara and Brennan, a lot of awakenings to the reality behind the veils, the behind of this human veil. And I started to get more and more, you know, interested and diving deeper and deeper. And I started, my conviction that we are able to heal with our hands was such that I began using my hands to heal people from headaches, okay, mostly because I was going to school, preparing for college, and, you know, on my spare time, on the weekends, I would, you know, do my favorite reads, you know, and then I would, if a friend came over or a friend of my mother or something, and they had a headache, I would just go and take the headache off with certain passes, energetic passes, you know. And, you know, I had a chromotherapist come to the house, and he was doing work on my mother and myself. And I went deep into chromotherapy. And then I went into, you know, the tarot fascinated me, and I read books on tarot. And then I got a book from a mystic man, friend of my mother. It was called Kabbalah, you know, and he didn't have an editor. It had no author. It was a solid, what do you call, like a hardcover, silver, very well printed, sophisticated, you know, very beautiful cover, just Kabbalah, no author, nothing else. And it talked deeply about Kabbalah and the numerology of Kabbalah. And I know there's been many other authors and Kabbalah, numerology books have been so varying, values have changed. I never quite found a book that was so close to accurate to what the meaning of the letters and numbers mean, and how to interpret names and country names, and everything surrounding you is filled with code. That's how I grew up, feeling that there was all this coded message everywhere. And of course I got to know myself, in that process as well. And that continued until my mother took me to get a haircut far away. I didn't drive yet, and we couldn't drive until we were 18 years old. So she had a friend who owned a salon, and we get there. I think I was 16 by then, 17 maybe. And she says, okay, I'm gonna come down, but she had this beautiful salon. She says, I'm gonna come down, but I just give me a minute. And she was taking forever to come down. We were waiting and waiting. And then she says, I just have a terrible migraine. I'm so sorry I made you wait so long. And my mother says, oh, Johnny can take it away, and all the people who were waiting for her as well, because they were waiting to get something done, stared at me, and I became paralyzed, And from that day on, I kind of became really self-conscious that there was an expectation that I would do something when I was just doing it spontaneously, playfully, or it worked every time. But the solemnity and the unexpected moment in public, and I was like, Mom, don't do that. And then I went to college, and then I came to the United States, and that's a whole, that it would take so long to go through. But yeah, I don't know how much you want me to talk about it, but when I met the father of my children, he was sort of like traumatized by his experience as a child, from being born from a Jewish German father who fled Germany around the time of Kristallnacht. After that, and then marrying a Christian Catholic woman. And I saw this man, this very strong, brave, successful man, cry like a baby, telling stories of seeing his father bow his head on the table and cry because he found out that another brother and nieces and nephews were found dead in concentration camps in Auschwitz, et cetera, et cetera. He thought religion was not a good thing, and he decided not to take sides, and in respect for that pain, I kind of hid my books, and he came in my life in a time where I really was needing grounding, because I was not really very focused on, I had absorbed so much varied interests in spirituality, and I was not able to find that singularity that I was looking for. I felt that I came with this idea that I needed to find, because I came with the inner knowing that there was only one truth, and that all there was different emanations and ideas about what that truth is, different paths, but that I was convinced that that was my goal, my inner goal, my soul's commitment was to find, this truth. And I think I skipped a very important thing that happened to me when I was 8.5 years old.
Right, I remember you've mentioned that before, and if you feel open to sharing it, I think that would be important.
Yeah, I think it's important because it speaks of where I was as a child. And when people ask me why am I doing this, there is an aspect that's vocational, and this is the simplest way. It's, we come as a soul with different commitments and soul dharmas, right? And I think, I was deeply curious about the nature of reality and the architecture of spirit world, and not and committed to it. And I remember arriving from school. I had not started school a long time. It was, but I got home from school. I remember I had a bunk bed, and I slept on top, and my sister on the bottom. And I was, even though I was a super active child, that afternoon, I just literally was guided. I felt like something was leading me to my room. I climbed up my bunk bed, laid down, and I looked up into the ceiling with my eyes open, and I started to ponder why we are here. What is this? In a very interesting way. And I started looking to the ceiling, and then I started to have an elevated view of all reality. And I saw the universe, right? I was seeing the stars in the sky and asking, what am I doing here? Who am I? And why am I here? And what is all of this? And all of a sudden, I was slowly transported into the universe, the cosmos. I was floating up above, and a revolving question kept coming to me: what was there before? Show me before this moment, and before the moment before this moment. And the years started to roll back as my body, my astral body, I imagine, was pulling back from the earth. I started to see the earth get smaller and change, transform, like it got more lush and green. And I saw all these fast, like movies being rewound, right? But at the same time, I'm getting farther up. So all of a sudden, I saw the solar system, and I am observing everything and saying, show me before, and what about before, and then with such intensity, I think because of my innocence as a child, I had no fear. I gave myself to that thought, to the experience, and I just went with it. So I just continued to go back, and then the planets started to disappear one by one. I say they started to pop, and I just saw the planets disappear. And then by this time, I could see other galaxies and the Milky Way, and like far away, like all these beautiful stars. And these clusters of stars, which now I interpret as, the galaxies, they started to pop. And I found myself in this black, nothingness, which today we could call that the void, that from all that we or I have learned and interpreted. And I found myself there, and I thought to myself, well, maybe this is where God lives, and I wasn't scared, and I was completely alone in this darkness with absolutely nothing. There was no existence around me. And I said, was there anything before God? Can you show me that? And in that moment, I came flying down at fast speed from wherever distance I was in, and I fell into my body like a big crash, and I sat up, I just sat up, and I opened my heart was beating so fast, and I opened my eyes, and I couldn't remember anything. I could not remember what that was, what I was. There was no name for anything. It's so hard to explain because it's a complete erasure of memory, there was absolutely no understanding of anything in terms of having existed before. Maybe you could say I was intelligent, I was present, so my consciousness was there, but nothing had meaning and nothing had name. And I didn't know my name. I didn't know there was such a thing as name. it's how extreme that erasure was. I lost sense of identity completely, and I it was a scary feeling. And I say that because one may sense that losing a sense of identity would be something powerful and beautiful, but for whatever purpose that happened, and I think it was because I was asking, what was there before God? What became imprinted in my experience was a sense of disconnect, that I didn't belong anywhere, and an emptiness that was devoid of love, because there was nothing that could reflect love. There was like just a vacuum. I was in a vacuum of existence. So I found my way down from the bed. I don't know how long I was there, terrified, with my heart beating in my hands, trying to remember. And then I left the room and ran. I found another door. Somehow I knew how to open the door, and I got down a flight of stairs. I lived in a building, and ran to the streets. And then I kept running. I ran like a few blocks, desperately trying to understand or remember something, because there is a sense that you know that something was not right, because I couldn't remember anything. So to make a long story short, I just eventually started to have recollection of my I think I remembered my mother, and then my grandmother who helped raise me. And then I remember my name. And there was this balm of a feeling of, oh, like a release and it was such a terrifying experience for me that I blocked and locked it away. I thought of telling my mother, but I thought she would think I was crazy. She would take me to the doctor. And I just wanted to forget. I remember telling myself, I'm never going to think about this again. It never happened. It never happened. And I was so happy to be back and feel the sense of love that I felt when I thought of my mother and my grandmother and my family, and a sense of belonging. And it took me a long, long time to have this memory come back and interpret it, which is the second part of it, which is, does it mean that before God, we can't feel this connectivity that's part of what God is? All these dots connect, all these points are interrelated, and it's coexisting together. And if I am taken out of that, then I'm out of the body of God. I'm out of this experience of expanded connection that makes the greater whole, right? Which is consciousness, God, and the divine, how we are used to interpreting it. So that's a definite mark of the intensity of my curiosity, let's say, in my soul dharma, and that led me through all those other things that happened through my teenage years and brought me to later on having another major awakening after my marriage, which is a whole other beautiful story as well.
Yeah, well, I just would like to observe that, the video we just shared with everyone before we began, when it comes to the question about Divine Mother, we have the beautiful quote from Paramahansa Yogananda. We saw, but in the end, who is she? And we, go through many images of Divine Mother, but the core essence goes back to that void that you experienced. That's, to me, on the cosmic level, where Divine Mother begins, in that, as Yogananda says, that Mahaprakriti, as she is called in India, is the word itself, is in the void. Suddenly the word comes forward, and that pure cosmic virginal vibration that proceeds forth from the uncreated absolute. So the fact that as a little girl, the intensity of your spiritual search and hunger was such that your spirit called forth an experience like that, where essentially you were brought back to the uncreated void and then forward into a rediscovery of love on the human level. And I'm so glad you shared this, Kalyani, because this is actually very intimately connected with the arc that we're sharing here today, about the large cosmic perspective of creation ultimately expresses itself for us all in our mother. Whether I think we had a good one or a bad one, or a good childhood or a bad one, we all have that in common. And then to bring it forward into the divine manifestations of the high beings that have been known, by the names of the goddesses, and then forward into the story of Mary. So I just wanted to say, as I was listening again, because you've shared some of this with me before, and earlier conversations we've had, it's a beautiful parallel to it. So is there anything else you'd like to share about your journey into your present work?
I can brush on it. Yeah, after coming here, I was married for 16 years. I had
excuse me for interrupting you. Okay, so because you're okay, because I'm aware from my experience in the theater about whatever's happening behind you, the eye will go there, and your cat was just
yeah, she's been here for the whole time. I'm just like
okay.
harassed her.
It's okay. Reverend Maya, it happens with Maya all the time. But suddenly there's a cat on the chair behind her, and Maya's talking, and the cat is being irresistibly cute. And I'm thinking, everybody's going to be looking at the cat. But okay, so
well, she's left. She's under the pyramid now. So she's fine.
okay, that's what pyramids are for. She's Sekhmet or something. All right, so yes, if you would please continue. You were sharing about how you came to your work. The further work you did in the 13 Moons lineage and your ordination as a priestess, and of course as a vocalist, discovering your gifts there. I'd love to explore those further. Maybe if you're interested in coming back a further time, because what you have shared with me in some of our conversations, those are such deep journeys that I would love to go to share with Blue Star Rising more of that. But I would love also to get to your pilgrimage that you recently undertook, to some of the places in Portugal and Spain associated with Mother Mary, with the Templars, and particularly, of course, the events at Garabandal. So could you maybe you'd like to share a little bit about your connection to Portugal and your discovery of not only your family lineage, but of how intimately it was connected to the Divine Mother, to Mary as the patron saint of Portugal, really in some sense the Queen of Portugal, and then how that led to your pilgrimage last year, and because this now begins to bring us into focus on Mother Mary and the prophecies.
Okay, well, Well, I think it's important to say that I grew up as my mother is Portuguese. She moved to Brazil when she was about 12 and with a family. And so I heard about Fatima many times and um, was very curious, as I always was about these things as a child. And but in 2016, I found the footage just online of the children of Garabandal in ecstasy uh, upon having apparitions of, the Virgin Mary. And I became completely awestruck. And many nights I fell asleep watching those children in ecstasy. And I could feel, I understood them. I could almost feel the ecstasy myself. I could touch it, you know. Recently, I got this brought back to me through my beautiful friend and Dharma sister, Yuval Miao, who did a Dakini uh, workshop, I guess, circle here last year. And, and at the end of 3 days, she said, I would like you to see um, this video. And she showed us, she said, Divine Mother is visiting um, everywhere, and even Egypt, Cairo. Um, and I find this very significant, and I want you to take a look at it. So she put this video on TV, or she had us find it and put it on TV, and we watched it, and it was very powerful. I had not heard about Zaitun, but then I said, "Have you heard of Garabandal?" And she said no. And the um, manager of her foundation, New Century Foundation, is from Spain, okay, where the miracle happened, and where the most powerful of all the apparitions, in my opinion, because I have taken a deep dive into where Mary is appearing in the last 20th, 21st century, in the last 100 years, almost, pretty much 100 years. And it's a lot of places, and all extraordinary experiences have happened, and healings.
And I remember you telling me that this gentleman who's from Spain had never heard of Garabandal, right?
No, and he was born a Catholic family in Garabandal. And he says, my family never mentioned it. I said, I know, but this is real and it exists, and let's watch, a few videos. And we watched like 2 or 3 videos, and then I found this major documentary that was released in 2020. So I watched that documentary, and then I shared with a couple friends, and then, I was so moved, and I had been planning to go to Portugal with my mother in April of this year and be there for a couple of months. And unfortunately, God had different plans, and Divine Mother had different plans, because she left this dimension, at the end of December. And this is something that was very painful to me, but I've moved into acceptance, and I just know that now she has this beautiful garden she wanted to have, and she's in a beautiful place. But so I felt, moved to, to just go there. And I ended up going, first to Portugal before I would take her. I ended up going last year in November. And it was a powerful experience to see that little village in the mountain is still untouched and has been preserved in a way you know, the message was not heard in the sense that, you know, Virgin Mary is asking us to make her message known. And this is between 61 and 65. More than 2,000 apparitions that were filmed. There's 4.5 hours of footage of these children levitating in absolute ecstasy, that flashing lights in their eyes, throwing sand, poking, piercing them, burning them. It doesn't make them come out of it. And no man or two men together could lift one child during ecstasy. It's like the world as it is here didn't exist to them anymore. And they would just be looking up. There was a flexion of their neck, very intense. And they would just be looking up, and they would walk backwards and up the hill and down the hill, and doing all these things that a normal human person cannot do. And they also could run so fast that nobody could catch up with them. It's almost like they were floating. And in one circumstance, actually, they observed that there was construction going on in the little church in the village. And they walked to the door, and there was just a plank of wood, and they were always holding arms. So there were 3 of them. At the center one walked on the plank, and the other 2 walked in air.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
They walked on air. I saw that spoken a couple of times, you know, about. So yeah, it's undeniable, and yet there is, you know, there is an insistence in the program that we live in, and that is preventing everybody to find out about it. There is a suppression of information that is very typical of this world we've been living in, which is usually, you know, the whole, you know, agenda that we've been navigating seems so afraid of, you know, of accepting that, you know, we can't succeed unless we come into balance, and we balance the gender polarities, and we can't continue to deny that God is, you know, is the union and yoking of the 2 energies of the feminine and masculine.
Yeah. Maybe you'd like to touch a little bit on, because I know you went to Fatima, which of course is, along with Lourdes and Jerusalem, you know, the greatest pilgrimage places in Christianity.
Yeah.
For Catholics, obviously, Fatima is a great Catholic pilgrimage place. And the difference, because when you look at pictures of Fatima online, the tree where she appeared is still there, and there's a fence around it. But the simple countryside that it was when the children were there.
These are the pines of Garabandal, but I have leaves that I collected from the ground that fell from the oak tree in which Fatima appeared. So
yeah, I love those precious pilgrimage mementos. I have a few of those from India. And of course, Fatima, there's a fence around the tree, and then you look out upon a vast square and 2 enormous basilicas. One which actually, a very modern looking one, holds 4,000 people. And then there is the traditional cathedral that is there as well. And maybe you could, you know, share a little bit on the contrast of Garabandal, that because the apparitions were suppressed by the church. And I think this is a good moment to mention the reason why. We touched on it briefly in the introductory video, but the message of the Blessed Virgin is very consistent from Lourdes to Fatima to Garabandal in certain ways, which, you know, to grow closer to God, to pray the rosary, and, you know, to make sacrifices and to pray for sinners. And of course, at Fatima, you know, there was the warning and the stated desire of the Blessed Virgin that Russia be consecrated to her Sacred Heart. and that Russia would lead the world into grave error, which would last a very long time, attacking the faith itself if this was not done. So that was the very year, 1917, of the Bolshevik Revolution and the institution of 70 years of oppressive, totalitarian, atheistic communism in Russia and the satellite states of the Soviet Union. And Edgardo Bandal, in her message, was the same. Everybody says, "Oh, give us a great message. What is the Blessed Mother saying?" Well, she's saying to pray the Rosary, and especially, to adore the Holy Eucharist and take communion, and to make sacrifices. And they're going, "Yeah, well, kind of like we do that already." But then towards the end of the apparitions, she asked specifically that an announcement be made by the children of her message in front of the church, that everyone should pray for the souls of the cardinals, bishops, and priests, the many, many cardinals, bishops, and priests who were on the road to perdition, perdition being the polite word for hell, and taking thousands of souls with them. And you remember, this is Spain, a very Catholic country, for almost illiterate peasant girls aged, 10 through 14, who revered the church, revered the priests. During the Civil War in Spain, many priests were martyrs. And Pope Benedict actually, I believe, commented on this in recent years and saying that, well, now we know what the Blessed Mother was talking about. The grave scandal of the pedophilia stretching back decades, protected by cardinals, bishops, and priests, and that the cup of justice is overflowing, and that a chastisement is coming, and that as our mother, she wishes to spare us this suffering, and humanity must turn to God. And so, because this was in a Catholic context, right? To me, this is the Divine Mother, the cosmic Divine Mother, coming through the channel of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who, in my mind, became an incarnation of Divine Mother almost as equally as her son was an incarnation of the infinite. So was she. And so she becomes the appropriate channel in that time and place to those children for this message to be given. And, when we were having our preparatory conversations about our broadcast today, you brought this up. I think this would be a good moment to touch on it, how the apparitions and the message transcend Catholicism. For example, when the Blessed Mother, at a certain point, the priest said, "I can't let this message be spoken in front of the church. The bishop won't let me tell this scandalous message in front of the church." And the Blessed Mother said to the children, "Well, you must obey the church." So I know you wanted to share your own understanding of the the transcendent reality that is coming through this Catholic context, and how we can best receive it. Would you like to explore that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a very important point for me because, for all who know me, I have felt very distanced from the church, and not really an advocate per se of it by any means. So I don't want people to come here and think that I am now promoting Catholicism. It's a very inner experience. Everybody has a perception of what works for them. And I see Divine Mother as, the other half of the Godhead, giving powerful messages of unification. Now, why I had to come to terms is Divine Mother coming as Mary so consistently for so long. And when we have so many different faiths, in the world, and like in my universe, my understanding of reality, it doesn't matter what faith you come from. It's the purity of your heart. It's the sincerity with which you feel the power and the words of your prayer, how much compassion you truly have for yourself and others, your capacity to forgive, the love in your heart, your desire to be of service. It doesn't matter what your roots are. The division to me has to end. Now, why? I had to come to terms and try to understand why is Divine Mother coming as Mother Mary, the Immaculate Heart, the Virgin born, pure, unstained, the Mother of God, okay, who carries her child, Jesus, in her arms, and always says, through her intervention, he will perform miracles. And when he appears, he says, I want you to love my mother's heart like you love mine. I want you to honor her as you know, as what is the church the proposal
John Paul II had it called co-redemptrix.
co-redemptrix.
Yeah.
I use the word co-creatrix a lot, so I was going to say that, but the church is co-redemptress, and there's been attempts to do that, and I think I have come to the understanding that to me is very clear why this ray, this archetypal presence as Virgin Mary, of Divine Mother coming into the world, is because Catholicism has such great potential, because exactly of this exaltation, one exalts the other. You know, the formula for the most important evolutionary step in my perception is the unification of the polarities, the end of the wars and separations in all levels, and especially in gender related things. This, if we don't stop it, it will be stopped. And I think this is the message when she says, ultimately my Immaculate Heart will win, because she has said that in several operations in different countries. Okay, all I'm trying to do is prevent your suffering and convert you to this understanding before it's too late, because you know the time is coming. She said the cup is filling up and now it's overflowing. This was back in 1965. She said, you didn't hear my message. And when she's saying that, she's not talking to the children. She knows who she's talking to, because the children don't have the power to put this in the press. But it's astounding, you know, that whoever controls the media has not allowed this to come out. To have people in Spain who have never heard of this.
Yeah.
And so much compelling evidence, you know?
Yeah, and it came out, if people go to YouTube and search under Garabandal, Unstoppable Waterfall is the name of one excellent documentary, which goes into the fact that the investigation that the church did at the time was not even worthy of the name investigation. Yeah. And that it had the obvious predetermined purpose of dismissing the entire thing. They did not consult the physicians. They did not look at the footage. They did not, you know, they basically had a predetermined agenda to dismiss the apparitions. And so, of course, if the church is dismissing it, you know, their influence in the media, especially in Spain under Franco in, you know, the 1960s, it's not going to get there. What they did do was that they took Conchita, the oldest child, away from her parents, you know, took her to this other town, Santander, I think it's called. And, oh, you know, we're going to take you to the seaside, and we're going to take you to the circus, and we're, you know, and then did you really see this? I mean, couldn't it have been your imagination? You know, they basically grilled the child. And, you know, these are priests. Well, the priests must know. And so she was willing to say, well, I guess I could, Father, if you say so, I could have, you know. And they brought her back to the village. And of course, immediately the apparitions resumed, you know, because Mother Mary was not about to be stopped. But
and the other children were concurrently having apparitions while Conchita was there. So it wasn't stopping.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
she was taking, she was being, they just didn't want, I guess, Mary wouldn't appear to her there because she would probably be more, you know, uh, harassed too much. Can you
Right.
imagine if she's isolated in ecstasy, what they would have done to her body to test or to try to shake her out of it? So my mother stayed away while they had her in Santander.
Yeah.
But the other kids they were under the protection of their parents in their homes, in their village, and they continue to have those
Yeah.
relationships.
So that's the thing about Garabandal, what you hear about in the documentaries is that whereas at Lourdes, you go to the grotto, that's where she appeared. At Fatima, you go to the tree
Mhm.
and there's the chapel on the spot where she appeared. In Garabandal, as I understand it, she appeared virtually like in every house in the village at one time or another, where the girls would happen to be there, and suddenly they would hear the call and they'd sink to their knees, and suddenly two strong men could not lift a 10-year-old girl while she
Mhm.
was in ecstasy. Soon as she's out of ecstasy, well, no problem. And
Just to be accurate here, they were 11 and 12.
11 and 12. It wasn't.
They were all either 11 or 12.
Conchita was a little older, a year or two, was she?
Conchita was 12. And
Oh, okay, at the
yeah, I
beginning.
think there was only one 11-year-old. There were three 12-year-olds. They were all
Okay.
12.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so people can see for themselves. We don't need to go into a lot of detail about the miracles and the phenomena. It was just quite astounding. But I know you mentioned to me about an experience that you had on your way up to the pine trees, which there's a little grove of pines on a hill overlooking a small town, and it's a remote mountain town, right, in northern Spain, that there's a rocky trail leading up to the pines where the children first saw an angel and then later the Blessed Mother. And you told me about there was an encounter you had with an old man
Mhm.
on your way up to the pines, which was particularly significant. Do you want to share about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. There are two events that were significant. Once there was a mass that was being said that day, and then also the fact that these nuns that live in another town come, and do this rosary prayer right by the pines. It's a very special event. I think they're there every Saturday, but this particular Saturday was a celebration, a special Saturday. I don't think they do mass every Saturday, um, but it was a very profound thing. So I, after breakfast, went to the mass. I think it was around 11, and and in the mass, he was saying it in Spanish, and I could understand. I would say probably 80% of it, maybe a little less, but what was more profound is that I knew he was having everybody confess through a confessionary prayer, and he was going to give the Eucharist to everybody. And I had not taken the Eucharist since I believe I was 15. And I remember my mother being very pained by this, because she grew up next to a church that, the priest used to have lunch with my grandfather every Sunday. And there were, everybody related to the clergy. They were very connected to the church. Um, and so when she divorced my father, she was excommunicated, because just by being a divorcee, you cannot take the Eucharist. And that's what she was told. And she was denied the Eucharist, and she couldn't do that anymore. And I remember her pain, and she had so much love for Jesus and Mary. she would, when she was a little girl, 4, 5, she would cross over the street. You're talking, she lives in a little village in northern Portugal, very close to the border of Spain. And she used to cross over to the church and steal baby Jesus from the manger and kind of take him home. And he was her doll. And she had no dolls, they lived, this is, we're talking like 1940s, northern Portugal. There was no electric light, no gas. It was all, wood cooking, wood heating. It's extraordinary. I mean, she told me so many stories, fascinating stories. She lived in a huge manor house. Her father was a nobleman and from the Four Corners, and she had this idyllic, like otherworldly life. I thought it was fascinating. But anyways, it pained her so much, and I heard her pain so often, and seeing the the dogma of the church and how it has created these situations where it's impossible. A woman has to accept abuse, if she's being beaten, if her children are being mistreated by the person, she still can't leave. It's just an absurd proposition. It's a non-workable formula, and that's why it has to change. And I think Mary's message is, we need to reform. She's not saying that, but it's funny that every time she appears, almost every time, either there's a council or now there's a synod. We're going to get to that. But anyway, my experience when I walked then to take that Eucharist, all those things were in my awareness. And I am also a divorcee. So that was hanging over my head. And of course, knowing my deep connection with Divine Mother, I absolutely knew there was no true impediment there. And I walked in and I took the Eucharist and came back down and sat down, and the overwhelming feeling of love that I felt was overwhelming. I just felt like I was being hugged from above, from behind me, like I had arms around me, showering me with such intensity of love, and tears were just coming down. It was a profound experience. And after that, I went back to the room because I just felt like I had to lay down and sit with that, because it was just a very profound, touching experience. And it was almost before lunchtime when I said, there's nobody there now. Everybody's going to be there at 5 o'clock. Maybe I want to be alone in the pines. And I started to walk up the stone path, and to get to the pines. And this man stops me and starts to talk to me. And he's standing near a station where it's the Sacred Heart of Jesus, something like that, appear there. It was one of the places of the apparitions. And he started to tell me that all the predictions were approaching very fast. He had 2 long sheets of paper he gave to me. And, there were, maybe a couple other people passed by, and he went on and on explaining that the times are here, that he's been following this for many, many years, that he moved there now. He was from the Canaries, and I ended up missing the opportunity to go to the Pines because, this little village, there's no restaurants, and the hotel only has 1 sitting time for meal, and the bell was ringing, and I had to go have lunch. But what is very interesting is that Reverend Maya had mentioned, something about me having some encounter in the Canaries in a grotto where I would receive a gift from a man. And it's funny because he was in some sort of a grotto because the stations were then accentuated with these arcs, and they put pictures.
Right, you showed me a picture of it, yeah.
And the candles are there. It's just like a holding place. It looks like a little cave. And this man is from the Canaries. And he's talking about the prophecies, and he gives me. And when I said, well, let me photograph the people, he said, no, this is for you. You can take it. So I was like, well, this is interesting. And then all of a sudden, all of that came together. And I thought, could that be the Canaries cave in the gift? Maybe sometimes
sounds fairly remarkable
have to be
coincidence.
interpreted, Yeah.
I remember you saying that there was something in the paper that was about the last apparition, the last prophecy that Mother Mary gave to Conchita, right? And what date that happened upon?
The message was, as my message from October 18 has not been complied with and has not been made known to the world, I'm advising you that this is the last one. Before, the cup was filling up, and now it is flowing over. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. Less and less importance being given to the Eucharist. You should take the wrath of God away from you by your own efforts. If you ask his forgiveness with sincere hearts, he will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of Saint Michael, the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. I love you very much and do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity, and we will grant your requests. You should make more sacrifices and contemplate the passion of Jesus Christ. In this apparition on November 13, 1965, Mother Mary appears to Conchita alone, and I think in the Pines, and she just talks to her softly, and she says, continue to do what you have to do. And she said, but I'm so bad. Why, did you appear to me? And why don't you take me now? I want to be in heaven with you. And she said, Conchita, when you come to heaven, your hands have to be full of good deeds. Right now, your hands are empty. So, yeah, she said, I love you very much. It was like a mother saying goodbye and explaining to her, I can't take you right now because you have to do your good deeds. You have to fulfill your promise in this lifetime, whatever you came here to do, and do your offerings, and live, and pray, and and I think the message has been to just live your life as if not getting attached so much to the material world, and just remembering that we're going to return from where we came, and that is the ultimate reality. And here we are, we're meant to not forget that. I think just don't forget that, and live as if you were becoming saints. That's literally how Conchita interpreted it. You should live your lives striving to become saints, because you will eventually return home, the true nature of our real being.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a beautiful synchronicity that you happened to be there on that day. It was Saturday, November 13th, when you had this conversation with the old man, the same day that the Blessed Mother said her farewell to Conchita. Right? Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like Carl Jung says about synchronicity, that It's an archetypal upsurge into our awareness that is there to make us pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sacred
Mm-hmm.
noticing by spirit, by the universe, to say, this is important, you know?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you felt compelled to share this, because I do feel her pain. I feel Divine Mother's pain, and as Mary, because so repeatedly she asked to let the world know I'm here, and the press just doesn't divulge, and there is so much information available. And I strongly recommend that people will at least take a look at the footage of the children before they look into anything else, because
Mm.
it's so undeniably real that I
Mhm.
feel you can't not be touched by it. And and then from there use your own discernment to collect information, but basically she makes incredible predictions. I don't know if you want to go into that. That's the most sensitive
Very
aspect.
much. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things we have to share. And as you say, she wants the story told.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
and I'm a storyteller and a spiritual storyteller. And and in your work and vocation, in conscious media, and you work with the sisters, and with your music, it's a beautiful purpose to be able to fulfill. So let me just share briefly the essential messages that from Garabandal that people are paying a lot of attention to now. And of course, her central message is, just as you're describing, Kalyani, that we become closer to the divine in our hearts, that we leave this world with our arms full of gifts for Divine Mother, of the good deeds we've done. That's her central message, and because there's this cup of retribution that's overflowing, she wants to save us from that. But there were very specific predictions that she gave about
Mhm.
a warning,
Prophecies, yeah.
a
Or
warning, a miracle, and a chastisement, and that the warning would be, and this is something that is described in Reverend Maya's work. It's described in this beautiful prophecy from this woman in Hawaii. If you go to sharetheprophecy.com, that there's this climactic event coming where there will be such an infusion of light into the planet, like a flash of lightning hitting everyone at once, that will illumine your soul. For good or for ill, you will have to face a crisis of conscience, I think you said, Kalyani, that it's, that for those who have many sins on their soul, many pains they have caused others, many things they have left undone, that it's just suddenly like a past life review at the end of life, just compressed into a very intense revelation of your soul in the light of God. And that there will be no denying it, that it won't be explicable by science, but there will be a sign in the heavens, an unignorable sign in the heavens, like I think like two stars colliding, it was described as, but not explicable by science somehow. So whether that means it's an asteroid, or is it two stars, or is it not? But it dovetails, this dovetailing between what people describe in the ascension timeline, what Reverend Maya has described, and also a vision that you had. And I wondered if you would be willing to share a little bit about the dream that you had about something that could be very much like this event of a light impacting the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I just want to make a little, you know, correction on which I think is a correction, that it's not that she said the warning is not going to be explainable by science. She said it's not caused by man. It's not
Oh, okay.
something that man could create. But she said
Oh, okay.
something that exists. It's a cosmic celestial event,
Oh, okay.
celestial event. And it's the best way that Conchita described it is two stars colliding. And then the miracle would be more of the paranormal, sign that would be left above the Nine Pines until the end of times. And you can see and photograph and film it. You just can't touch it. So yeah, it's like a hologram or a light form or plasmic field, or some people say it's going to be a cross, but it's all, from this point, it's all, assumptions that people are making or trying to guess work, But I did, in 2020, I did an online workshop event. It's a virtual circle where I called, a message for which the time has come, because I have had, I was working with dream. I've had some dreams in my life, nothing so incredibly prophetic, but because other beings who are far more prophetic than I could ever dream to be are seeing similar things I saw in my dream, I started to feel a responsibility just in case, it resonated. And at least I feel like spirit wants to tell me something, and I did my part. I shared with my community, and I think there were 18 people in that gathering, and I said, if there's more to come, then I will share as I receive more. And in 2018 I was working with and in this, just to clear, in this gathering I went in a lot of different directions, and because I had dreams about, I've dreamed with UFOs a lot through my life, and there was a particular one that was very intense, and it matches, some other seers prophecies, or visionaries were seeing certain things like that happen. There were a couple of things that maybe that would be a different show, Michael, but
Right.
this one is, I actually recorded, because at the time I was working directly with dream. I was doing dream work. And I had a journal, and I was doing certain preparations before bedtime. I was following the work of this phenomenal writer and, teacher in terms of dream work. I think it's Robert. I can't remember his name now. And I was, writing the dreams. I wrote a lot of dreams down. And this one night, I wake up and I am so intensely groggy. I cannot bear to grab a paper, and I think I wanted to go back. And what I decided to do, I wanted to go right back to the dream. So I grabbed my phone and I recorded, actually. I recorded very briefly and like slurring my words. I was still kind of in dream time, so that I could quickly go back to sleep. But what I saw was I was floating up and outside of the planet, floating above it, and I saw this huge golden ball of light, golden light come, and I was overlooking the earth. I could see the map of the planet. I wasn't too far, and I could see this big, it didn't look like a solid ball. It looked like a plasmic golden fire comet, okay, a plasmic comet, if I could describe, because it did have a dragging tail, but it was very ethereal looking. It wasn't, at least in the dream, didn't feel like a solid mass. But it was coming down, and it hit the Pacific Ocean, where I thought that was the Pacific Ocean. In my vision, when I remember it, it feels like the Pacific Ocean. And I was told that, from that moment on, there would be an activation. It would enter the center of the planet, and it would cause a lot of earth changes. I specifically remember searching for the words, and all that I could come out with was volcanic activity. But I think in the back of my head, I was trying to say more, but I was so sleepy and my thoughts were, so I think earth changes in general, but definitely volcanic activity activated um and then I heard Maya message from Thoth in December 2020. And when I heard that, I said, oh my God, this is exactly what I saw in my dream. The way she explains it, she doesn't say it's going to be, a comet or an asteroid. And it's funny because Conchita says this celestial event is in the dictionary in Spanish and starts with the letter A. Aparición, asteroid, it's like it could be an asteroid.
Apocalypse, right?
It could be, yeah, apocalypse, it could be anything, but she said the event itself, has a name. It's a celestial event. So, and when she said, anyway, but where do you want to go from here? Because there's so many places.
Yeah, well, actually, I'd love to bring it back to Reverend Maya and, what she's received from Thoth, which is, we touch on this a lot in Blue Star Rising, that there is this turning point, is a certain number of awakened hearts on the planet, that there will be a triggering moment when a sufficient number of us have opened our hearts, risen above the fear, and are awakened to what's happening. And as Maya often says, it's not that you have to follow some dogma or believe in Thoth or Jesus or Mary or Buddha or anyone. It is about an awakened, loving, humble, serviceful human heart, that there is some metaphysical trigger that causes from the heart of Gaia herself, when enough of her children have reached this, it's a kind of energetic trigger such that there is a stream of light out from the heart of Gaia herself to the central sun of the galaxy. On, and obviously this is on some trans-temporal level. It's not, not something that's going to take 2,500 light years to get to the center of the galaxy. That then, this is what she calls the pyramidus radius matrix, and that there is a light that hits planet Earth that activates all the pyramids all over the planet, which essentially triggers the ascension process, whereby there is, the rising frequency is such that those who are in tune with this frequency are making a quantum leap forward in evolution, and are essentially that there's a separation of worlds. And part of this, and she describes this in detail, that there is this illuminating light in the soul, and there's corresponding earth changes, and there's, a miraculous event. This is Garabandal. This is, a warning and illumination of the soul. The chastisement being earth changes, but there's this miraculous, it's not about the specific miracle at Garabandal, of course, and the sign, and the people who are there will be healed of all ills, is what the children said, that Mother Mary said. But this is to me the power and urgency that I know in our conversations about this, and this is why we're having this program, that that you and I have both felt about the story of Garabandal and how it dovetails with what's unfolding now. That there is signs such as the Pope going to Moscow. It was spoken of as a trigger. His recent announcement that the Pope may go to meet the Patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow. No Pope.
When I found that out, I got chills, because all the pre-warning signs are starting to come out.
Right, exactly. And they spoke of how she said, it will be as if the church had ceased to exist. People will not be able to go to church. They will not be able to receive communion, and communism will return. Now, communism has been gone in Russia since 1991, but, and was Russia consecrated to the Sacred Heart as Our Lady requested at Fatima? Yes, in fact, I know you've done a lot of research on this. that John Paul II did, in fact, very specifically and emphatically, because he's such a devotee of Mary, make sure that her request at Fatima was fulfilled. And lo and behold, within a few short years, the Soviet Union had dissolved, and
some people feel that that he attempted because he really wanted it, but not many bishops showed up. He wasn't official. But I feel Russia is consecrated to her heart regardless. I've seen pictures of Vladimir Putin kissing her image. There's an enormous church, the largest church that they've built so far, she is the central theme, and it's an enormous image of her on the altar. I mean, they're not apologizing, they're literally listening. My impression is that, Russia is deeply listening to the messages of Mary.
Yeah, and Russia has been devoted to Mother Mary for centuries. Obviously there's 70 years of godless communism from 1917 to 1991. But there is also something that Putin said, and it's not like I'm some big fan of, this authoritarian dictator. And yet he made a point in the speech that it seems that the West, meaning Europe and the US and the Western Hemisphere, has lost touch with our Christian roots in terms of morality and a connection to the divine, and
cultural destruction, a demolition of culture that has been going on.
Yeah, exactly. Call it the cancel culture, is one word for it these days. And there is a counter movement that you can see to, certainly within the US. I know a lot of people, and I think this is something that in your work, Kalyani, and with Blue Star Rising, because there were so many distortions of Christianity, and so many sins committed in the name of the church, or one church or another, Protestants against Catholics, that the essential stream, the true grace of Christ and the Mother, is reemerging now, and being understood in a larger context, being understood in the context of sacred science and of quantum reality, and that this grace is now resurging, is streaming forward. And it's something that I think, right here and now, in this moment, as you and I are having this conversation, this story is being revivified, restored in the full flow of its joy and inspiration and divine love, that this story needs to be told from an understanding, not within a narrow Catholic context of, oh yeah, the Virgin Mary, no, of the Blessed Mother as an expression of the universal divine mother at a time of crisis, where we need the divine feminine in balance with the sacred masculine. The sacred masculine, the masculine needs to rise above the toxic masculine, become sacred again, first of all. And that this is something that is such a powerful need. And this story is so inspiring. It's difficult, like, as you say, it's difficult for me to look at photographs of the children without being moved to tears, because in their eyes, I see her reflection. They are beholding the Blessed Mother. And they can understand why thousands of people came simply to be present to that reality. They describe the descriptions of Bernadette at Lourdes are the same. Here's an ordinary peasant girl. Everybody follows her to the grotto. Oh, they say they're going to see the Blessed Mother. Then it's like, oh, she's standing there, and suddenly she sees her, and there's this complete transfiguration.
Yes.
Her face. Suddenly, there's a witness to one of the girls that got up on dollars, and suddenly this ordinary peasant girl became transfigured to a beauty that I was in awe to behold. And because it's the reflection of the Blessed Mother in her face.
They had 3 warnings before, because they couldn't understand how these children coming from completely different homes, there were 4 of them, right? No, 3, 4, no,
4.
4,
4.
4. So they were coming from completely different locations in the village without having a set time, because the operations were unannounced many times. They were spontaneous.
Right.
They would feel 3 callings. They called callings or joys, because it would be a sense of like, they would have a sense of joy. The second one, they never knew how far apart they would be. They varied in distance, right? The second one was a greater joy. It was like, they would just like become like, there was an anticipation and a sense of joy. The last one was a glorious joy, something ecstatic, and they would rush out, and they don't know how to explain, but they knew exactly where they had to go. And they were all coming out of their homes at the same time. If you were able to stand in one spot where you can see the 4 homes, the kids would dash out the door and rush to the same place at the same time. It happened over and over and over again. So those warnings are joys. So when they actually saw Mary, they would, their faces would be illuminated with this grace. It's like a feeling of grace and beautified. And it was like, everybody mentioned it, and you can see looking at the videos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful to see. And, the sense that it's coming sooner rather than later is something that, of course, we have to live every day with as much of an awakened, loving heart as we can. And I know it was also said that the warning, where there's this sudden light illumines your soul, and you are awakened to the reality of God and your own state of your soul, that would happen between March and the end of May. It would happen on a Thursday. That would happen near a day of great celebration in the church that is very rare, and that it would be on the feast day of a martyr or saint connected to the Eucharist, because she mentioned very frequently the importance of the presence of Christ in the Eucharist, that this was a grace that would help us a great deal to tune into. And so many of these, of course, you can check your calendar. You can go, okay, we need a Thursday between March and the end of May, and and you're looking at what years does this fall in, and then you've got the Pope going to Moscow, and I wanted to touch briefly on when she said the return of communism. So communism went away in Russia, as we know. It's still in place in China, but many are saying, and I think there's a lot to be said for this, that whether or not you believe it's a deliberate agenda, I personally do, that the pandemic is resulting in, first of all, the churches were closed. You were not allowed to sing, right? Singing is bad. People were not taking communion, and all of these things were described in Garabandal, that it will be as if the church has gone away, people will not be allowed to but communion, and it will be the return of communism. Many...
It you like a disguised installment,
disguised version of it, and this is this is what many people are observing, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said in a speech in Berlin not too long ago, addressing the pandemic, that referring to what we'll just call the corrupt elite, those whom General Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address, the military-industrial complex and those behind them. They love pandemics for the same reason they love war, because it allows them to radically change and exert extreme control. And that in this case, when you look at, okay, vaccine passports, and it's going to be connected to a financial reset. The financial elite have been talking about this for some time. Digital currency, digital passports. Here, take your shot and be a good boy or girl, and you'll get your universal basic income. This is essentially totalitarian surveillance, tracking, communism in a new version. Now, I was raised a liberal Chicago Democrat, and then I realized left, right, blue, red, Democrat, Republican is a circus designed to control us. But I just put it out there for people to consider and look at what's happening. And I'm not denying that, yes, there is a virus out there, and it's good to be careful about it, and by all means respect, the boundaries of others around this sort of thing. And let's not be naive about what's going on. Just look at the record of Big Pharma, look at the lawsuits, look at the damage, look at the documented injuries. The science is becoming unignorable, and the protests worldwide are becoming unignorable. And so, this is, I'd like to just ask you, for your own sense, because I know you've done a lot of research on this, for your own sense of, and of course we can't, it's not like we're going to sit here at Blue Star Rising and prophesy the warning and the miracle, but of the timing of this, given everything that you're seeing and what you feel is our best path forward, and how do we live our lives, and your sense of, it could be soon, it could be late. I'm not asking you for a date on the arrival of these things. But anyway, I know I'm sort of going circuitous here, but whatever you'd like to share at this point, I'd like to invite.
Yeah, I just want to make an added note here in this process of, what you just went over, that, Divine Mother, the Virgin Mary appearing to the children Garabandal said that the chastisement is conditional to the response that the attending of her request. So some people think we have gotten worse and worse, but it's all relative. If we believe that Russia is consecrated to her heart and communism is not, returning exactly the way it would have been if it hasn't, and now there is a strange cover-up attempt to maybe insert it, but actually not coming actually from where we thought it would come. It is a lesser thing, but it looks like a persecution of the church, like you said, because you can't attend service, and and it's like there is it could be that some of it has been amortized a little bit, but we're still going to have the warning, and then the miracle according to the prophecies, and the children explaining that each one of them separately said always the same exact thing. And so what we know is that, for example, Conchita knows the date of the miracle, and that she's going to announce it 8 days before it happens. And that Mary Lowly actually knew the date of the warning, but she passed away, I think it was 2009. And, what we know is that, like you said, it's on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Garabandal time. The miracle will happen there above the pines, where anybody who is in the vicinity of the mountains or in the mountains will be healed from whatever condition they have, and they will convert if they're non-believers. And when I think she says convert, it doesn't mean you're gonna necessarily convert to Catholicism. You're gonna convert from being a materialistic person, not remembering that there is something bigger than you. There is an expectation of a return to the heart, to our innocence, to kindness, to love, and it's not a joke. And this is not. We're going to be asked. That's the message is. The materialism and the greed has taken over so absurdly that it's not going to be allowed to continue. It's just that's what I hear the message being. The warning, she showed Conchita the warning, and she said, the only way I can explain is 2 stars colliding. So I thought to myself, let me take a look and see if there's any prediction of any star colliding, because in 1960s, we didn't have the capacity we have today. And, without wanting to create any alarm, there's for 10 years, I believe, there's an astronomer at a university, a college here, I believe in California, that's been with their students studying the behavior of this binary system on the right arm of is it the Northern Cross, in the constellation of Cygnus. And this binary star has been getting closer and closer to one another. It's the first time that we're predicting a supernova. And people were saying it's going to happen between 2021 to 2023. And then they made tighter calculations and said it's going to happen in May of 2022. So do I know that that is it? Well, we also have the Betelgeuse is dying in 2019. I think it was 2019 or 2020. It dimmed so much that they were worried, because usually before it's a red
dwarf, I think, yeah. A giant.
Red giant. Yeah, Betelgeuse is a red giant, and it's going to die. It's very hard to calculate when it's going to die, but it starts to behave strangely. So then they thought, oh no, these are gases. It's having explosion, and it's having gases, and it's blocking the light. Then the light returned. But the truth is, we don't know. It could be Betelgeuse, and Betelgeuse, maybe even a lot closer and cause more.
Well, actually,
it's a fire that won't burn. Okay, she said there will be a fire that won't burn us. Now we can imagine if that is a cosmic event or a celestial event. Is that a physical thing, or it's a physical thing followed by absolutely undeniable? She said the most important thing is when you see this, and everybody will be able to see it in the sky, you instantly be hit with a vision of yourself like God sees you. And in that sense, is like you're going to become completely overly aware of all the harm and the pain you've caused, and you will feel that pain. It's a life review, and then you're going to be aware of the good things you could have done you didn't do. And it's going to become so clear, as if you were the victim of all your harm. And she said, to some people who have lived a completely self-serving, materialistic life, it will be so painful they would rather be dead. It's how she actually feels. The warning is so intense that if she didn't know what the chastisement would be, which is conditional, which is a good thing, she would think there's nothing worse than the warning. So the warning may feel very light for people who are already aware and in service, and they're aware of a spiritual reality, and they're not living self-serving lives, not blindly greedy and walking all over people just to get to their ends, and the ends justify the means. And that kind of people will have enormous shock when this happens. And why is she doing this? She says she's doing this to save more souls. It's not to punish. It's because when you see clearly, because she says people are committing sins, however we want to see it, moral, abrupt moral trampling, that's another word for sin, and they are not even aware, because it's like there's been a numbing. And because the examples coming from above, like she said in her second warning, saying that there are priests, cardinals, and bishops in the road to perdition. And after that, we were revealed the debauchery and the horror, and the crimes committed by the church itself. And so how can we restore the faith? She's coming to say, your examples have not been good, but there's hope, because we do exist. Spirit does exist. And I'm calling these leaders to come to their knees and do what needs to be done and create reform and clean up their act, or else. And this or else is coming. And I'm not saying here, now I'm going to become an advocate for prophecies. No, I am just saying this is me relating, right, through your channel, what seems to be the very compelling message that touched my heart very deeply. This is a personal experience of me observing an apparition of Mary that seems to be very near um, um, manifesting itself. And it's
Mhm.
not for the bad, it's for the good. For all of us who are, um, had enough, for all of us who have had enough of the degraded state of conscience of humanity that is present not only in daily media and television, music, everywhere you look, people will be reminded of the existence of a power and a governing, a loving conscience that is observing and making sure we don't derail completely and is bringing
Mhm.
ourselves back out of love. So she says, when this warning happens, there will be intense conversions. She says, people will fall to their knees and cry and repent and ask for forgiveness and pray. This is going to be the first act of realization of, awakening. There'll be a huge awakening. And then from that, the miracle will happen within 12 months. Um, it could be 2 weeks, up to 12 months. It could be 3 days. She says within 12 months of the warning, the miracle will follow. But between the warning and the miracle, there will be a period of peace because people will be contemplating what just happened. And there'll be a sense of reconnection to the divine and respect for it, And however you come back, if going back to church is how you want to do it, or if it's just praying in the quietness of your home and having a practice, having something that reminds you of that connection. And she mentions the importance of fast, and prayer, so fasting and prayer. And then the miracle, again, it will be local. It's going to be in Garabandal, and it's going to be, if the miracle by any chance happens to be the stars colliding, they're actually expected to collide anytime now. It could be March. They can't calculate it. Some people say, no, it's not going to be until 2023. But when you put together the martyr of the Eucharist, and some people say it's a young martyr, I think it's because a little known martyr. It's not a martyr of the Eucharist or related to the Eucharist that's very well known. So I wouldn't say it's a major saint. It's a martyr of the Eucharist. I found 3 martyrs on May 12th of 2022, and I looked at dates all the way to 2040. Okay. And there's many forums and many people talking about it. And there's possibilities of being 2024. Other believe it's the feast of Hermenegild. It's an Eucharist martyr. And others, and there's Saint Stanislaw. There's all these names, um, but because the stars are colliding, um, you know, um, I found this particular calculation. It was one that said it will be in May. I thought, well, let me just check and see if there's anything in May of 2012. And there is, on May 12th, there is a martyr of the Eucharist. He was a child, Saint Pancras, and he was 14 years old, young teenager. And he's not a super known martyr of the Eucharist, but he is a martyr of the Eucharist. And 2 other martyrs celebrated on that day. They were Roman soldiers who converted. Other martyrs, Neros and Achilles. And
Well, so when we take the dates of these martyrs and we take the possibility of 2 stars colliding predicted for May of 2022,
and that could happen also. It will repeat itself in 2033. And again, just so that people don't get obsessed, I don't want to cause
right, it's not like, we want to emphasize we're not here to like make a prediction about this cataclysmic event.
And the thing is,
However,
if the warning has to happen before that, because that is a calculation of when the warning would when the miracle would happen.
right.
That the warning could happen tomorrow. It could happen February, it could happen in March, could happen in April.
Yeah.
If
And
the
when
war,
you, right, and when you combine it with the Pope
it's
going to Moscow, the
Mhm.
communion being
Mhm.
repressed, all of these other things happen.
December 6th, the Pope has not gone to Moscow, but December 6th, he said he was ready to go, and you can pop the news and see that. That never
Yeah, they're
happened
making
before.
plans. The diplomats are arranging it.
The other thing is a synod, remember?
Oh,
And she
right, that there will be a sign-on.
There will be a synod. And in those days, the word synod was not used. And somebody said, what do you say? What do you mean? Because when she appeared in 1961, the Pope had
Vatican II was going on.
Vatican II. There was a reform in place. They began that shortly after Mary started appearing, Garabandal. And now she said there would be a synod, and somebody said, what do you mean? There will be another council when this whole thing happens, when the miracle? And she said, no, she didn't say anything about a council. She said a synod. And the children didn't even know what a synod was. Synods started to be used after 1972, after they had the council. So the
Right.
Pope began the synod in October 13, is it October 10 of last year? So there is a synod going on that will complete itself in 23.
Right. It's similar to what happened with Bernadette at Lourdes, where, they say, well, doesn't the lady say her name? Ask the lady her name. And then Bernadette says, well, this is what she said, and I don't know what it means. Just like with Synod. She said, I am the Immaculate Conception.
Mhm.
And that's because, Bernadette had no idea what it even meant.
Mhm.
And similarly with the children in Garabandal, to say synod, she said, Blessed Mother said to synod, whatever that means.
Yeah, she said something about a synod,
Yeah.
and most people didn't even know what that was. And now
Yeah.
we're having the synod of the synodality. That's what it's called. A synod of
Okay.
synodality has begun in October 10 of 2021. And the Pope has announced on December 6th that he's ready to visit Moscow.
Yeah. So
Yeah. We
it
want to
brings
be
it
as
back to
positive, but it's interesting. And there's two stars colliding in
yeah.
there.
And it brings it back to this like Catholic context. It's like, okay, here's the universal mother coming through as Mary in a Catholic context in a Catholic country. And then there's also, like, for example, the Hawaiian prophecy, which you can find at sharetheprophecy.com. And the woman chose to remain anonymous, which I think is, a good thing. But she specifically describes when talking to these very high dimensional beings, off-planet high dimensional beings, who essentially said, okay, there has been a dark faction controlling your planet for a long time. They have been stopped. They have been arrested. And so they no longer control your planet. And the woman said, oh, how wonderful. And I said, yes, well, that was the good news. Here's the bad news. The accumulated momentum of their agenda and all of the people who are still following it and putting it into place, and all the consequences of our rape of the planet, and all of that is still playing out. And just because the leaders have been removed, it's like trying to turn the Titanic before the iceberg. It's okay, kids, it's going to be a close shave. And we're just talking about the date of the warning and the miracle. The woman from Hawaii said specifically that she was told face to face in a very intimate encounter, the date has been set. There is no turning back. It is coming. It's no longer about, oh, you different timeline here. Oh, if your kids get good, you can shift to here or there. No, the date has been set. The time is coming. And then there's a description of exactly the warning, of exactly the illumination of the soul, and the ability of those who are awakened to go and help heal the people who are in this horribly agonizing crisis of soul revelation. Yeah, so it may be years off, it may be days off, and we have no way of knowing. But I feel like the gift to that, we are doing our best in our way to offer, and the many others who are following these is simply to awaken to this flow of grace the reality of Divine Mother, the unignorable reality of the events at Garabandal and elsewhere, and the reality of the Divine Mother coming through as Mary at this time. And as you said in your invocation, your intention that you said, Kalyani, at the beginning here, that use your own discernment, tune in with your own heart, and feel whatever intuition is yours to feel about how this may awaken you or bring new light for you. And that in any case, okay, maybe you would, if Conchita makes an announcement, you'll feel moved to buy a ticket to Spain.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, it's about the lives we live. It's, it's not about believing in Jesus or Mary or Garabandal or Fatima or the Pope or, Yogananda or anyone. It's
And Mary
about,
said, but first of all, live good lives, remember?
yeah, that's it. And to tune into the divine, to, whatever it is, to pray, to fast once a week, which is healthy in any case, but with a spirit of knowing that we are the soul. We are not this body that decays and passes away. We're not even this mind with its restless thoughts. We are the pure consciousness of spirit. That is our essential nature. And spirit, if you choose to relate to her that way, is personal, is motherly or fatherly. If Jesus saw God primarily as father. In India, she is mother primarily. That just find that image of the divine that touches your heart, and take time each day to go within, whatever your practice may be, to connect and to bring that joy of your soul out into your day to live a more divinely attuned life, which will without doubt be a happier life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And truly desire the best for others, not just for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it feels like we have reached a good closing time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to touch on?
No, I think, yeah, it's been a long one. I think we did at least 2.5 hours, huh?
Right. Well, we'll share this pretty promptly. We'll fine tune it and share it with you all. And
Mhm.
Kalyan, I just want to thank you so much for making the time. I know. I mean, when you shared your experiences with me, it's very inspiring to me, and because Divine Mother has been my devotional focus for most of my life. This is, perhaps, well, it's certainly one of the most inspiring programs that we've had, and so thank you so much.
Well,
Truly,
thank
deeply
you.
appreciate it. Yeah,
It's been an honor and a privilege. It's all, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And thank you all. And of course, we are sharing in the, below the video in the text, you'll see a link, first of all, to Kalyani's beautiful music videos, Namu's Invocation and Tears for Inanna, very transcendently gorgeous music, and her astonishing voice in devotional expression to the Divine Mother. And of course, we have our Patreon link there as well. Grateful for any modest amount you may wish to contribute on a monthly basis. And of course, we'll always have Reverend Maya's link as well to newearthstar.org. And she has her beautiful Akashic counseling sessions if you want to take advantage of that. So with that, again, thanks, Kalyani Sundari, for being with us. And we will see you all again next time. God bless us, everyone. Bye for now.